Unfortunately, just 5 months after arriving, Lubu succumbed to smallpox on December 27, 1784. He was about 20 years old, and he's laid to rest in the family plot of Captain Wilson in a church called St. Mary's. Pictured here in front of the Palau Community College in Koror is a statue memorializing Lubu and naming him the first scholar and goodwill ambassador of Palau. On September 20th, 1898, Spain gave a lien on several Micronesian islands to Germany. And the Germans brought in their own missionaries. By then, Palauans understood the social and economic importance of understanding foreign culture. In 1902, the first police school opened by the Germans, and it was considered the first vocational school in Palau. In 1906, the Ibudul at the time had a school built right next to the German mission for children of high-ranking families of Koror. An actual public school system was still not in place at this time. The Germans only educated them because they wanted a labor force, and they wanted to make use of the resources on Palau. After World War I, the Germans lost control in Palau in 1914 to the Japanese government. In 1915, the Japanese government accused the remaining missionaries of trying to convince Palauans to revolt, so those missionaries were sent away. The Japanese were the ones who are accredited with offering the first formal public school system in Palau, where all children were mandated to attend, and there was no religion classes available. During World War II, the United States of America gained control of Palau in 1945 from the Japanese government. And until the end of the war, the United States Navy took over teaching classes that were still available. And they were helped by the assistance of local Palauans. In 1947, the United States Navy sent potential teachers from Palau to Guam to be trained. And in 1948, the Navy moved it from Guam to Chuuk. During the 1950s, Palau opened its first middle school, and in the 1960s, they opened up their first high school. In 1962, the Kennedy administration introduced the Accelerated Elementary School Program, which introduced various changes to the Palauan schools, including they mandated that English be the official language of instruction. They sent American contract teachers over to Palau to teach, and more schools were built with new books and new supplies for the schools. After a few years, the American teachers were replaced by the Peace Corps volunteers. The Peace Corps volunteers were different from the American contracted teacher. They actually lived with local Palauan families. They learned the language and the customs before they were assigned to a school. And they actually treated these families like their own. And they saw it as it made it easier for the students to communicate with them. Now that you have a brief picture of the formal education in Palau, I'd like to share with you some information that I discovered about a very unique high school in Palau. There was a chief named Timedad who started a new religion in Palau, and he called it McNair, which means united. They believe Palau will always be for the Palauans, and they should never follow the religion or life of another. They practiced traditional customs, and they went against the way of the Japanese. Timedad was later jailed, and he died in prison in 1924, but Modaknye is still around today. I was very fortunate to meet and interview Beth B. Chokai, who is the current principal of Palau Modaknye School, which is I'm going to refer to as BMS. So BMS is the only private high school in Palau that does not teach a religion, and it actually has a dual curriculum. While one curriculum focuses on academics, the other focuses on a vocation, such as fishing, carpentry, and agriculture. And their main focus is also to teach Palauan language, customs, and traditions. And all of their students are required to attend Palauan studies classes every single year. One class that they offer that Beth B. Chokai believes that they don't offer at any other high school is a study of Palau origins, proverbs, and legends, such as the story of Uwap that I mentioned earlier. And their classes get to go on field trips to go to the locations where they actually happened. BMS is designed to keep Palauan roots strong and the belief of culture and traditional ways. 3 years ago, they started a summer program where they immersed all their students in Palau traditional practices and activities. And during that time, Chokai saw how much the youth were lacking in knowing the Palau traditional ways. All BMS students stay in dorms on the campus where they learn to be self-sufficient. There is a school cook who cooks breakfast and lunch Monday through Friday, but it's up to the students to cook for themselves in the evening and on weekends. They wash their own clothes and have a timeline schedule for their chores. The campus is located on sacred land that's in the shape of a heart. I really tried to get it on Google Earth. She showed me a picture of it way up, and it actually looks like a heart, and I wasn't able to get that for you today. And they ask that you stay on the walking paths in the dorms out of respect. And on the picture you see here, those are the dorms with the walking path going through the dorms. Ken Suzuki shared his personal experience with me while he attended BMS, and he attended in 1985. While he was a student there, everyone washed their clothes by hand. They collected firewood, caught fish, and gardened for taro for their starch. They cooked over an open fire, and about once a month they were able to get extra food from their family. And he helped to build a basketball court, which is still on the campus today. When I asked 15 Palauans if they felt whether or not the Palauan language is in danger, this is what they had to say. 8 of them said yes. One person believed that it was because Palauans wanted to emulate being American, while another thought that when Palauans go off island for higher education or in search of jobs, they tend to forget their language. 2 of them mentioned mixed marriages. They believed that when 2 people got married, if one of them was not a Palauan, they would probably communicate in English. While 2 others felt that it was exposure to foreign languages in everyday Palauan society. It seems common today that Palauan households would have a domestic helper, and I was told that most domestic helpers come from the Philippines. And so when they come in, they speak in a mix of English and Tagalog, which is one of the many languages in the Philippines. And so some people felt that because they had a domestic helper who didn't speak Palauan, they were at work all day and their children was at home learning to speak and listen in those 2 languages instead of spending time listening to the Palauan language before they attended classes. Oop, there's one missing. Oh, there you go, sorry. So 2 people felt that, no, the language is not in danger, that Palau is not overpopulated with immigrants, and that the language was still going strong. And 5 out of the 15 felt that they couldn't say yes or no, but 2 did comment. One person said, English is everywhere and more popular, while the other said, well, there is a possibility. So in regards to traditions that have been adapted, the most popular one mentioned by everyone that I interviewed was about the celebration of a woman's first childbirth, which we call the ngasa. And here are a few adaptations mentioned. One woman shared that she learned from her family elders that traditionally men didn't come to these events and there was no alcoholic consumption. Another person learned that traditionally they didn't have music and the woman had to be a married individual in order to be able to do the ceremony. And from my own personal experience, I attended the ngasa of my oldest sister Maria, who's pictured here, when I was a teenager. She emerged out of our home in Angar with the black bra on to cover her breast. Later, she shared with me the fact that she refused to exit our home topless, even if it was part of the tradition. She was ashamed to be exposed. She told me that while our mother told her to put the bra on, our grandmother told her to take it off. And so here are 3 women from very different generations. And you know, they had to argue about which tradition do we follow. You know, do we follow the Palauan tradition and take it off? Or from my sister's point of view, you know, she was born and raised Catholic. So she thought, you know, she didn't want to be ashamed by going out topless. And so being Catholic won that particular battle. While the eldest woman thought it was a shame not to go topless, the other 2 thought it was a shame to expose themselves. And during an informal conversation, an aunt of mine shared a story with me. She told me that our cousin, who she believed was the first woman in our family to wear a black bra, tried to emerge out of the house topless, but the man who raised her said, "Go back in the house and put on a bra, because there's United States Coast Guard men here, and I don't want them to see you that way." So based on my research, I believe foreign educational policies, religion, languages, and culture caused Palauans to adapt and modernize their traditional customs, and in some ways, they completely disappeared. I hypothesized the more a Palauan is educated, the less likely they were to participate in traditional practices, but I don't think I took a big enough sample to give you a definite conclusion. I met people who attended school until just the 9th grade, but they knew a lot more about traditional knowledge than some people I met who had a college education. One woman I interviewed in particular had a degree in anthropology, is now currently a senator, and she is deeply involved in cultural understanding and preservation. While each colonizing country believed it was probably doing the best for the natives and for themselves, you know, it's one of those, where do you weigh the benefits from the not so great things that happen when colonizing countries come to your island? So during my research, new questions emerged. I asked myself, well, what if I had asked high school students or younger people, do you feel the language is in danger? And maybe ask them, what do you prefer to speak with, English or Palauan? How would they respond? And are they interested in carrying on the traditions of Palau? So Palauans value formal education, but I think they should still hold on to those 8 principles and components that were taught traditionally. It's not only up to Palauan leaders to preserve our language and tradition, it's up to all Palauans to make sure that their future great-grandchildren don't have to Google their traditions and their language, and to be able to practice it firsthand. And I think it's really important for all of us to understand why it's so important to our identity. Thank you very much.